Thank you so much for joining us on the Dwelling Show. I'm your host, Ola Dantes. I'm super excited because I've got an awesome friend, Spence Hilligoss. Hey, Spence, how you doing today?
Doing great. All that's Friday. Can't complain. Really excited to be on the show. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for coming. You have an amazing story. I just can't wait for us to dig in. So first and foremost, I'm sure you can do a way better job than I can in terms of telling our dual listeners a little bit more about, who Spencer is and, kind of what you've been doing doing lately, actually.
Yeah, happy to. Uh, I live out here in the Bay Area, California, and so I work in the local business, as people say, which is the tech industry and software companies. But these days, my life is comprised of a few big buckets, which is family. That's first on the list. So I got a couple young kids. I'm very happily married to my wife, Jennifer Morimoto, and she's also my business partner. So that's always a conversation that people seem interested in wanting to talk about, which we can go back to later. But beyond that, yeah, I've been building teams and growing sales and operations organizations for tech companies for the past 13 years. But more recently, we actually got into for the past few years, passive investing. And a lot of that came from this journey of really hardship and hard work and a lot of good timing, really. From my upbringing, I came to believe that there's two different ways you can approach kind of your financial life. And that is, playing financial defense and playing financial offense. And if you'd like, I can kind of walk through that story, but it's not a quick one, so I don't want to bore people. So you let me know.
Yeah, no, let's bow away. Why not? I definitely want us to touch on that. So, financial defense or financial offense, I think we should definitely touch on that for sure.
Cool. Well, I think, in terms of passive investing, I originally just didn't really get it, so these days what we focus on is passive investing in specifically real estate syndications, a little bit of self-storage, but mostly I would say multifamily. We actually, I first found out about real estate back in the day. So I got to take you all the way back to when I was about 6 years old, believe it or not. My dad was a broker. He was like one of the top real estate brokers in the country in the 90s. And so I watched him grind hard, throughout his career. And I was sitting there observing and kind of soaking up his work ethic and his learnings on some levels. But, into high school, he finally started roping me in to do some of that stuff. And ultimately I was working open houses for him when I was like 15. And it was a weird place to be. I was sitting there going, I don't want to be here right now. I'm sitting here, showing these $10 million houses to people who, I really would rather be hanging out with my friends when I was like a teenager. So he wrote me into the family business. I watched it for a long time. But ultimately we got into some challenging times from there. And these challenging times that I'll explain briefly really impacted me and my worldview of this whole financial defense, financial offense stuff. So we entered this period of time in my teenage years that we kind of call in my family like the dark decade. And it came down to really starting with my brother, my younger brother Justin. He was a teenager at the time. He was diagnosed with a rare form of pediatric cancer. He had a brief, beautiful life, and he passed away and lost that battle. But shortly after that, a series of events occurred, and they ultimately, kind of snowballed negatively for the family. So a lot of times, if you lose a child, your parents tend to get divorced. So mine did, and then there was a foreclosure on a house, and it just snowed from there. So like I had to watch these like financial fallout events compound, and like it was devastating. I observed that over a series of years. And the resulting downsizing from my family left this like profound impact on how I see the world. And it left me asking these questions that were like, how can I prevent this for my own family now that I'm a parent of two young kids and a husband? How can I take away some kind of lesson about how to be proactive, play that offense, that we're talking about? How can I like prepare myself and my family for things like job loss, things like terminal illness, things like a serious injury that would prevent me from working, because my dad was a broker, and a broker is an active role, right? An active role means you are constantly working, and if you don't, the income doesn't come in. And most W-2 work, and I still work a W-2 job right now at a real estate tech company, but if I stop working there, just like if a broker stops working, that income stops coming in too. And so what I witnessed was all these hardship, really challenging moments in my family and my dad before he bounced back and revived a career later on. And now he's one of our biggest investors, of course. But I would say, I watched what happens when the income stops flowing. And flash forward to 2016 roughly, and I'm sitting there doing my tech career. My tech career was 5 different software companies, and I somehow stumbled into a real estate tech company where I'm still working now, and it's called Lending Home, and we do about 500, 600 loans per month. There's single family home flips, so it's a little different than the multifamily stuff where you do a couple hundred units, but it's a lot of transactions. And the takeaway I had recently in the last few years, all that was this: there's this like wealth playbook that Silicon Valley professionals, like brilliant people, way smarter than I will ever be, academically totally badass, but they kind of stumble into a wealth strategy that is a 4-point wealth strategy. And it sounds like this: go and find an early stage tech company, and try to find basically next Facebook or Google, and get as much of that early stage company equity as you can. Step 2, grind really, really, really hard and work like 24/7 nonstop. Step 3, like hope and pray that the company that you picked is that one Facebook or Google, and it's going to have a huge exit, so you can go off someday and accumulate enough wealth to go buy a yacht. And of course, the reality is most don't do that. The vast majority don't do that. So step 4, one that we all know from the real estate investing education that we've gotten through our own entrepreneurship, but people out here will match their expenses to their income. So whenever they get raises, they just keep increasing their lifestyle needs. So as a result, they don't save anything, And so admittedly, I realized in the past few years, like I was on that path, and I despite having a successful career, I was not on a track to set my family up for financial offense and financial defense. And so I was surrounded by colleagues at this real estate tech company who were flippers. And I was like, I don't want to become a flipper necessarily, but I got the bug. I got the real estate passion. And I found multifamily, and I read Robert Kiyosaki. I listened to, 400 plus podcasts, and read 24 books. And I eventually realized there's a better way to do this. There's such a better way to do this. And now it's for us, it's passively investing in multifamily. It's passively investing in self-storage. And it's finding ways to develop cash flow and multiple income streams, just like Robert Kiyosaki talks about with, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that everyone knows so well. You want to build pipelines for income, not just carry the bucket back from the proverbial well and dump that one-time cash moment on the table. There's nothing wrong at all with flipping, wholesaling, brokering, all these strategies that are one-time cash event transaction based, that they're absolutely fine, but they're active. And I wasn't looking for that. So we were looking for something that was better, so we could play offense and we could play defense. But that was a mouthful, but you wanted it, so I gave it to you.
No, I'm so glad. Like, it's fascinating. I think I was speaking to one of my partners yesterday, and the reality is, when everybody say, I want to jump, people ask me all the time, I want to get into real estate. And I have this diagrammatic view in my brain of like commercial, residential, single storage, assisted living, self-storage, single family, multi-family. It's like, what do you want to do? And more importantly, why? Right? If you're, that's so key. And I think you talking about financial offense and financial defense, and really tying that anecdotally to what you saw growing up, I think it's not only fascinating, it's so key. Because many people think, I want to go into real estate because I want to make money. Well, you can do Bitcoin, or I don't know, sell vapes. I make money. Like, why this
That's right.
thing? Yeah. Like, so I really love that you broke that down. I mean, I think it's amazing. And I think that's really crucial for everyone listening to this to really understand like why you're doing what you're doing. Because guess what? If you don't really understand that why, you're just gonna give up anyway. What when you face your first stumbling block, and there's loads. I see them
That's
every day.
right.
Yeah, in this business. So again, thank you for sharing that for sure. I want to kind of jump into some
Yeah.
of the questions. So, you basically clearly you were thinking about this, for some time, and you have, your dad kind of, you saw him do all that. So you were like, hey, I don't want to be overly passive, right? I kind of want to thread the passive investing path. So what was the first thing that you did, kind of from a tactical perspective in terms of kind of
Hmm.
paving your way into the game?
Yeah, I was trying to recall this a while back. I was like, when was the real moment? And I think for me, it was it was a foundation of education, and I kind of breezed over this very briefly a moment ago, but I became habitually obsessed with education on the real estate stuff, and it was because like I have been focused on team building, professional development, personal development in my tech career for years, so it's kind of ingrained in me already. Like if I want to be like, I always want to be learning and developing something, and I think that is actually, I used to just take that for granted. So I don't want to breeze over that. Like if I feel that the need to go learn something, it just means cool. Next action one, go to Amazon, purchase book, purchase audiobook, make sure it's on the way. What's the next book that's going to be coming in? And then start devouring and taking notes and engaging with that learning. So big first step, as just taken for granted, is build the foundation of education so I don't sound like a total dumbass. And I actually know how to at least navigate the basics. So that was the first foundational step. The real first step, though, beyond that, though, all was my wife and I and business partner Jennifer. We decided we were ready to go and buy passively, what we thought was the right low passive strategy, which is the same thing that many people out there do when they want to get into this business. So we went out locally. We weren't ready to go buy something sight unseen. And in the Bay Area, that is not a cheap thing to go and try and do. I mean, everyone talks about how pricey that these coastal cities are, and we are no exception here. So we looked around for a year. We spent a year driving neighborhoods on the weekend, and we would go out to far beyond our local, like we live in Alameda, California, which is tucked right between Oakland and San Francisco, if you know the Bay Area. And we were driving north, south, east, west, looking around different submarkets and markets to find a small multifamily, like a duplex or a quad. And we made a bunch of offers, and we realized we weren't getting the traction that we wanted. So we also found an agent, and I got this strategy from my reading. We wanted to find an agent who was an investor. And so we did find that person. She was great. And we eventually went and found a market we liked, and we bought a duplex. But the numbers are not exactly flattering if you want a cash flow strategy, and in the end, just my opinion, there's two different strategies that you can go for in this investing game of real estate. You can go for cash flow, or you can go for the appreciation of the capital gains. That's it. And so I didn't fully understand yet how to go and seek that cash flow like as a primary strategy. Like I knew I wanted it. We had a target already for cash flow per month, but I didn't really understand how this purchase that we made, which was a $430,000 duplex, and why was it not the best idea for us if it only produces $250 a month in cash flow? Is it going to appreciate? Yes, it already is. Are we going to hold it? Probably going to hold it long term. Is there no rent control in the city we bought? Yes, and it's a beautiful thing. It's stabilized, all those things, but I still wouldn't have done that. If I could do it over again, I wouldn't have done that first. I am thankful we did it. It got us on base. It got us in the game. But that was our very first step before we went and moved on to other things.
So definitely a good segue, and that's like, my kind of go-to advice. Not for anyone living in California, by the way, to go buy duplex. You have to, you have
Yeah,
to,
that's
yeah,
right.
you have to live in a reasonably priced, city, state, whatever. But yeah, I think, like you said, that's really kind of the idea is to build momentum, right? You can read and read and read and listen to podcasts. I'm getting this, what they call analysis paralysis. I never pulled the trigger. So I'm glad you guys did that. And then you kind of felt, I guess, real estate. And maybe that push is what got you into your next phase, which is my question. So what did you do from there? And why did you kind of move? I mean, you guys are no small fry in the multifamily syndication space. I mean, about 3,000 units, about 320 million or 28 million now, you've kind of co-sponsored. So how did you kind of make that transition from this duplex to kind of a multifamily?
Yeah, well, nice of you to say. Thank you for that. I think we went through the same kind of path that so many smart people out there have gone through before they end up making this jump to commercial and multifamily in particular, where you hear the story, buy local, step one, buy remote or sight unseen, or call it long distance, step two. Step three is you realize maybe bigger is better. And maybe bigger is better for a lot of really good reasons. Maybe bigger is better because it is actually going to give you more stable cash flow. Maybe it's more recession resilient for a bunch of really great reasons that are data driven. Maybe it's because you're actually going to see a level of professionalism in the commercial space and rigor that you cannot find necessarily at every level of the residential space. So for all those reasons, we went through that journey of local residential, remote residential, multifamily, and multifamily remote in a period that some people take up to 5 to 10 years. And so we went through that in a period of probably like 2 years, and really fast. And I won't go into why I think that was, but I think we did go buy turnkey properties. We built like a modest portfolio of remote residential turnkey properties. They're cash flowing, and I'm so thankful I'm like a really great vendor to help us with that. But we still have them. We're probably not going to sell them imminently. And we did realize, though, the people that actually invest in turnkey and they stay passive, like, is it fully passive? Because we're so busy in our day jobs and with our kids and everything else. We are actually looking for something passive. We don't want a word. We want it to mean something. We were still dealing with phone calls on a monthly basis with a property manager while these properties were stabilizing. We were still dealing with, reporting and operations. And regardless how good a property manager is, you're still dealing with some more of that stuff on residential than we really wanted. So that's what that was the catalyst to push us into investing in syndications as limited partners. Is we said, what is the strategy that will require us to do the diligence up front, make a good decision about investing in the right deal, strong returns, but I want to get a strategy that will be scalable infinitely. Like could we invest? We don't have the capital to do this, but if we could we invest in 1,000 of whatever we want to invest in passively, and there would be no impact on time. And multifamily passive investing met that need for us. And so that's how we ended up getting into it. Yeah, and it's been a great strategy ever since.
Oh yeah, I can totally relate. Being that that's what we do here at dwelling.com, can totally relate to that. So of course, kind of another segue here. Of course, so you made that decision. You did the turnkey thing. You were like, this is not bad, but still, we want something completely passive. How did you choose a syndicator, like myself? I mean, what were the kind of processes? So if there's a dual listener listening to this and maybe they're kind of in the same shoes, maybe somewhere in California or maybe in the Bay Area, they're like, actually, I kind of want to do what Spencer's doing. And how did you go out there to find syndicators like myself? What was that process like?
Yeah, it was interesting because at the time when we were making that change from kind of turnkey to multifamily, I was on Bigger Pockets. And so if any of your listeners have never gone on there, get on there immediately, create your profile, get on the forums. The forums are just magical. They are so valuable. And so I was on there networking like crazy. And I was actually seeking a coach. I was seeking a coaching program. And I was looking for it specifically to learn underwriting at first. So I did join a coaching program. It was extraordinarily helpful. I analyzed a ton of deals, and I really feel like I built a good foundation for underwriting. Like I knew how to analyze these deals. And that was a good first connection to some coaches. I interviewed I think it was 8 different coaching programs. And some of I thought about doing a personal private coach, wasn't quite ready to go pay like a 5-digit number. Some of these coaching programs can cost up to $50,000, and I wasn't quite there yet, financially or mentally to go do that. But that's where it started. And so throughout that networking, I am going on Bigger Pockets. You can see people who are really into this stuff. You can see thought leaders. You can see people that are actually out there adding meaningful value without hard pitching. And that's what I found attractive. So I reached out to these folks, connected on the phone calls, and I have a framework that, from the tech learning that I have gotten from my own career is, if you want to move fast and you want to move fast with some good rigor, you really got to put down on paper, this is a framework, like a simple framework to help you make good decisions. And that's how you're able to go make complex decisions really quickly. And so we did that around the, these 3 already, Ola, but the operator, the market, and the deal. And for an operator, we have this really, now it's kind of pretty looking in a nice spreadsheet, but at first it wasn't. But at least I knew enough to say, I want someone with a track record. I want someone who can actually have gone through something that I call failure response. And there's sub bullets, believe it or not, super nerdy, but there's sub bullets beneath each of these points that I'm calling out here, like track record, failure response, communications, like how do they manage that? Who is the team that they have surrounding them? How did they select that team, that is surrounding them? And I want to know, have they done this before? Have they done this before in that specific market? And on the failure response thing, the reason why I wanted to highlight that is it's just a very fancy corporate way of saying, I want to make sure the sponsor that I'm working with has been through something that felt like an entrepreneurial kick to the teeth. It's like, have they gone through something really challenging to their core, so that in the event that this project I'm about to invest in goes south for any of the 1,000 reasons why multifamily deals can occasionally hit bumps in the road, are they going to have steadfast conviction? Are they going to be able to weather those challenges without freaking out and making questionable decisions with my capital and in the capital of others? So it's that type of stuff, whether big pockets, networking, getting on the darn phone, going to meetups, going to conferences, and then putting together my criteria for how I vet these folks. All of those steps were critical in us kind of making the first leap into investing. And now it doesn't take so long, right? Like, to make a good decision and make a connection with great people out there. At first it feels really slow, but eventually you're able to kind of dial in your processes. So hopefully that diatribe made some sense.
No, I think that was actually fantastic. Actually, I really like how you kind of you kind of broke it down into subgroups as well. So you can kind of just take as you're interviewing the sponsor. So that's pretty unique actually. So now you're, passively investing, right? You're doing deals, you're kind of now in the zone that where you want to be. You're not spending too much time on the phones with property managers or whatever. How does that feel, right? And where is this train heading, right? What's the eventual goal for you guys?
Yeah, man, that's the $1 million question, right? I think for us, so in the last couple of years, and then very recently, I would say, we have found that our own investing efforts and passive investing efforts in multifamily quickly evolved because people in our own network out here in the technology industry, they were like, wow, you guys seem like you're having a lot of fun and making some really great returns on this passive investing stuff. Can you tell us more about this? And that, man, when that first started a couple of years ago, I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. People are coming to us to answer questions, and I hopefully we can add some value for them. It really accelerated over time. And when we finally decided, I would say back in like 2017, like, let's go treat this like a business. And then 2018, it was like, we're going to go treat this like a serious business. and it has accelerated like crazy. And so now, you mentioned, we've co-sponsored, over 3,000 units worth of transactions and 328 million worth of transactions. And that has been a journey of just momentum that I could never have forecasted. So I think, what are we going to do in the future? I can give you the high level lofty goal, which is, I'm a big believer in trying to give back. I would love to be able to marry, eventually doing lead sponsorship work, potentially, and at least doing co-sponsorship work, but creating an infrastructure that allows us to marry things like financial literacy and community for tenants, and be able to slam those up against each other in ways that do something special that you really don't see a lot of out there. Because that is a bigger need. I think a lot of I won't go off on a soapbox here necessarily, but I'll just say, when I talk to my kids and I think about, they're still pretty young, but I think about the education that I can hopefully provide them around finances, and like, how to be successful and have a chance at competing in this world. There's just so much more I would like to give them than like our school systems can give them. And so many people out there are never going to get access to basic learnings around the stuff that we're talking about here today. And by the time that they hit the age 30, 40, 50, like, they will already have missed the best window to be able to go capitalize on this stuff. So I would love to be able to figure out how do you marry financial literacy education with the community aspects that go into having a profitable project. And I don't have like some perfect pro forma business plan for you on that one yet, but that is like an ultimate vision that we would like to be able to do. Because right now we've been thankfully very successful and accelerating on helping other people get involved and invest into these deals, get cash flow without depleting their capital. That's a great outcome. I genuinely think it's helpful to help overworked people that are grinding, who really don't have an exit strategy from their careers. But I think even more so, I would rather have people learn the fundamentals of financial literacy that I wish I had found out earlier in my life too. And I want to help other people find that too. So soapbox complete, but hopefully that made sense.
That makes absolutely absolute sense to me, because one of my favorite kind of quote is like, you just don't know what you don't know. Like, I really think that's what
Totally.
life is about. Like, you don't know what you don't know. So like you said, you've got this super intelligent guys, and girls in Silicon Valley working hard, and they don't know about multifamily syndication, right? These are probably like, Stanford graduates, Harvard, these are really smart people, right? And they're thinking,
That's
well,
right.
this is my only shot. Like, let me find the next Uber, right? So, but here is this, old, like century old, thing, real estate that you can actually make, great returns from. So I think that's like really nice that you're trying to figure out how to just kind of, democratize this knowledge, right? So more people can hear about it. And I think that's like fascinating. And obviously, any way the Dwelling brand can help you. Obviously, we have our One House pledge as well, and our Vacay pledge we do, yes. So any way we can kind of help, contribute, let us know. We're definitely dwelling into the quick rounds. These are going to be quick questions, quick answers. You ready, sir?
I'm ready.
All right. As much as I want to keep going, this is such an amazing conversation, but we just have to, because of time. So first question.
Let's go.
Yeah. What makes you, Spencer, unique? What is that differentiating factor that separates you from the next guy or the next girl?
I think for me, I am the most reluctant business professional. And as a result, I think it gives me a really, really interesting ability to see the perspective from outside with a bird's eye view of every transaction. What I mean by that is, I grew up in a very contrarian mindset. I used to play in bands, in punk rock and metal bands, and I started my academic life being a programmer back in high school, and I never in my life thought I would be a sales leader or salesperson. That would have disgusted me when I was in my high school career if you told me that. So I come in now and I'm like, wow, I'm in real estate. I do a lot of business development operations, but I have this contrarian mindset, and ultimately it allows me to bring my whole self and be very authentic and look at situations with this contrarian and bird's eye view. I think it's quite helpful.
Yeah, and definitely, useful. In our game anyway, you have to kind of sometimes play the devil's advocate, just to kind of make sure you're looking at the numbers right. Second question: I know you're a big, you're an avid reader like myself. What was the last book that you read, and what was the one thing you picked up from that book?
Yeah, the last book I read was called "Ego Is the Enemy" by Ryan Holiday, and I took away from that book, they have these wonderful examples of historical leaders from all throughout history, and I found that it was remarkable to hear. I think the example was from Genghis Khan. As funny as this sounds, that Genghis Khan's advantage historically was the fact that they would go into a new culture, and it sounds a little bit more aggressive than I try to adapt to the business world, but the learning is key. They go into a new culture, and they were able to be successful because he was able to be successful because of his ability to integrate the learnings everywhere he went quickly, and then bring it to the next engagement. And that is an egoless strategy. It's an egoless strategy because it implies inherently I don't have all the answers. Therefore, when I meet someone new, when I go to a new type of interaction, when I read a new book, when I see a new business plan approach, a new framework, I don't have all the answers. Therefore, I sure as hell better be open-minded. And if I come out of it with something new that I've learned, I'm probably going to borrow that idea. And so that had to be that was a really, really good book. I
Yeah.
took a lot away from it.
Yeah. I've definitely I've read that one. Yeah, Rhinology, I think, is carved out this niche of like just tapping into historical figures like Stoics and Greek. So yeah, it's very fascinating. Yeah, great book. Last question. Last question. Obviously, you've got Madison Investing, your company, you've got your tech job, you've got family, your kids. I can relate to. That's just a thing. It's a lot going on. What do you do for fun?
Oh my God. Besides real estate, uh, so I do still play guitar. I enjoy that. So in addition to still trying to hang out with old friends, which is few and far between sometimes these days, I like playing guitar still. My audience is no longer comprised of people that wanting to come listen to metal and punk. Now it's my kids, so I get to play like Wheels on the Bus for them in an audience of two. And thankfully, they're big fans of me, but they are only 2 and 5 right now. So I think they're probably going to grow out of that at some point soon. But that's one of the ways I have fun.
Yeah, and I was just laughing out loud in the background of mute. Yeah, of course. I mean, from Wheels on the Bus go to like, you evolve with them to whatever song, 10-year-olds like, at that time. So I'm sure you figure it out.
That's,
That's
that's right.
funny.
I'm still trying to learn my 5-year-old loves Old Town Road, believe it or not. So I'm trying to
Oh,
learn that one.
nice.
I'm like, how do I learn that on guitar? I don't know.
Fantastic. Oh man, that's so good. So I mean, if there's a listener thinking I want to reach out to Spence, maybe they're in the Bay Area, or maybe they're anywhere in the country, what is the best place people can reach out, connect with you?
Yeah, MadisonInvesting.com. So yeah, you can reach out on our website. We got some just basic and also actually pretty in-depth information. And you can sign up for our mailing list. You'll see a nice big bright button on there, and we send out a monthly newsletter. And so if people would also like to see opportunities, then we do have to go through a process of qualification and all that stuff. But anyone is welcome to come and sign up for the newsletter, and we'd be happy to provide you some educational materials at MadisonInvesting.com.
Thank you so much, Spence. It's been an absolute pleasure. Really had a lot of fun just listening to you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, likewise. It's been a blast, Ola. Thank you so much for having me.